States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Comptroller, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Canali, Carlisle, Colvette, Easter Thomas,
Present.
Ford, Johnson, Logan,
Present.
Morgan, Robinson, Vice Chairman Smiley, Swearingen Washington,
Present.
Warren,
Present.
Chairman Jones.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have one comment card. That's from Ms. Desi Franklin. So, Ms. Franklin, there's not an item number. So what we'll do at the end of our deliberations, we'll call you up to speak. At this time, we have one item that's on the agenda. That's the ordinance related to the revision and changing of certain council districts in the city of Memphis. I'll hand it over to you, Committee Chair Easter Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today, and thank you for calling the special meeting, Chair. So in our last redistricting committee meeting, due to lack of quorum, we decided as a committee to send the revision or revised maps and changing of certain council districts, single member districts, and super to the full council for consideration. The reason that we were lacking quorum, one council member was online, but we were advised that that vote wouldn't count, and that interaction wouldn't count, so we wanted to make sure to be in line with that. And so everyone should have received a physical and also virtual map, a revision as voted on by the redistricting committee, as everyone is a part of. It took a lot of deliberation from the mapping subcommittee. We even had some submitted community maps that came from some community members. We had one community member come and explain his submitted map as well. And so for the amount of time that we had and that time constraint, I would say that there was a lot of community engagement that we haven't had before here on the council. And also want to thank those council members who were able to participate physically and virtually, or either by email or such, because we do have a lot of constrained schedules. So thank you for also doing that. And then just as a council as a whole for making this process something somewhat engaging and different from what we've seen. Well, really, we haven't seen anything from what has been done in the past for the terms before us. So I so move this, Chair, but it was sent down without a recommendation due to a lack of quorum.
Is there a second? Yeah, is there a second? Okay. Any discussion on this item? Well, were we going to have a presentation of it today, I guess, for any council members that may not be here? Ms. Harris, were you going to give a presentation or anything? Okay. Okay. Colleagues, what I'll also do, because, you know, prior to our redistricting committee, we received a communication from our attorney, and it was talked about whether or not a special call meeting. So why we're meeting today is that based upon what the Election Commission has provided to us, that their drop-dead date was going to be April 14th. And any type of ordinance would have to have 3 readings. So the purpose of the special call meeting was as a backup plan to try to have the first reading today in this call meeting. We were going to meet on Tuesday as our regularly scheduled meeting on April 11th for the second reading. And then meet the next day, April 12th, for the third reading. So, but Mr. Wade advised us that there's some question, some uncertainty, whether or not ordinances can be passed in a special call meeting. So, it's one of those questions to where an opinion is an opinion until there's a judge in a court that determines that opinion to be law or not. So that's why we're here, if knowing that whatever decision that we make, there is a possibility that it could be challenged. Now, what I will share with you all is a communication that I sent, I'll read into the record yesterday, that I sent to the Election Commission, because some of those discussions that took place, there was a letter that was sent to Chair Easter Thomas from the chairman of the Election Commission, Mr. Mark Luttrell. And then there was further communication between Mr. Wade and Ms. Phillips about whether or not that date can be moved. But my letter to her yesterday, and all of this is still based upon, what's taken place in the past. And so my letter yesterday, and there can be copies available to you if you want to. Dear Ms. Phillips, and it was dated April 4th, 2013. In a letter dated January 18th, 2023, from Shelby County Election Commission Chairman Mark Luttrell to Councilwoman Michaela Easter Thomas, Mr. Luttrell requested that any redistricting legislation be passed no later than Friday, April 14th, 2023, citing the first date for candidates to pick up filing petitions on Monday, May 22nd, and the Election Commission staff working on the GIS shapefiles and recoding of districts. With Election Day being October 5th, 2023, Friday, April 14th, 2023 is 174 days before the election. As you are aware, Chairwoman Easter Thomas has chaired the council's first redistricting committee that has included members of the community in the process of determining district boundaries for the next 10 years. With the April 14th, 2023 date just 10 days away, we will be holding our regular meeting and 2 special call meetings to vote on district maps that have been presented to the committee. However, our city council attorney, Alan Wade, has opined that the actions taken in the special call meetings could face a legal challenge. I'm respectfully asking that the Shelby County Election Commission grants the Memphis City Council an extension until May 16th, 2023 to pass our redistricting legislation. May 2016, 2023 would be 143 days before Election Day, 6 days before the first day to pick up filing petitions, May 22nd, 2023, and 66 days before the qualifying deadline of July 20th, 2023. This extension would provide a timeline significantly longer than the dates associated with the submission of shapefiles and the recoding of districts in advance of the special election for the District 4 seat on the Memphis City Council last fall on November 8th, 2022. For that special election, the filing deadline was August 18th, 83 days before the election. The council approved Ordinance 5833, substitute ordinance to revise and change certain council districts, on August 23rd. This date was 5 days after the filing deadline and 78 days before the election. Redistricting maps presented to the committee do not represent wholesale changes to the current district lines, and a majority of the precincts will remain in their respective districts. This fact, along with the fact that the Election Commission would have significantly more time to process the changes made last fall before the election, combined with the unprecedented community input, are the primary reasons I am seeking this extension. So that was my communication to Ms. Phillips, but I received on today an email. Dear Chairman Jones, I regret that the Election Commission cannot honor your request for an extension of time to complete redistricting. We will need any required legislation to be passed by April 15th, 2023, if we are to have sufficient time to complete our process before petitions can be issued. While some of the maps I have seen make minor changes, the significant issue for us is that all 7 single-member districts in both super districts have some sort of changes. Some of the maps I've seen will require precincts to be split, adds significantly to the effort we must take to verify the accuracy of our records. The difference between the redistricting that occurred for the special election for District 4 in November 22 and the upcoming redistricting is that we were only issuing petitions in one district, and so could focus our testing on that one district. For the October 5th, 2023 election, we will be issuing petitions in all 9 districts. We will have to complete testing for the entire city before we can issue petitions. I'm sure that you can understand the chaos that would ensue and the lawsuits that would follow if we issued a petition for the wrong district to a candidate. The Election Commission must have sufficient time to do our work. Judged by the number of calls we're getting and the hits on our website, there's tremendous interest in the upcoming election. We want it to be flawless, and our deadlines were set with that goal in mind. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of the communications that took place. And I had a question for Mr. Wade, if you would, Mr. Wade. And so my question, Mr. Wade, goes back to the whole thing about petitions being issued and petitions being filed. So there's about a 60-day period of time between when a petition is going to be picked up and when it has to be turned in. So from the standpoint, I guess I'm of the opinion, if I'm a candidate and I happen to live in District 2, and I pick it up on May 22nd, but I find out after the council has changed the districts, let's just say hypothetically a week later, I can pick up another petition for that new district that I happen to be in. So my question is, and in this short period of time, I haven't had a chance to ask this question of Ms. Phillips. To me, the deadline that should be significant is not when the petitions are issued, but when they are filed. And based upon any action that we would take today, colleagues, we would have these district lines in place prior to some 70, let me check my dates. We would have these in 66 days before the deadline to file this. Now, keep in mind that the district lines were turned in 5 days after the petitions were the deadline for the petition to be turned in. So, to give you an example, Ms. Swearengin Washington had to turn in her petition on August 18th. We did not, as a council, give them the district lines until August 23rd. So to me, it's a consistent message, an inconsistent message that the Election Commission is giving us on these deadlines. And so perhaps, Mr. Wade, you can shed some light on that.
I would be glad to. On the election that occurred in November 22 was to replace a resigning member. There is specific provisions in state law that provides a truncated period of time. The deadline is moved from after that date you mentioned, and within, I don't remember exactly, I wrote an opinion, I think I gave it to all the council members at the time. And so the state law allows us to borrow the county's provision for replacing a member whose term ends before a final election. All of that was done consistent with that statute. So that's a totally different circumstance than what you're talking about here. Now, as far as your argument about whether you use the date is picked up or the date is filed, that's a question for Linda, not for me, okay? My understanding is that they have a whole lot of rigorous testing that they have to do, and that's probably what she's concerned about. And she indicated to me on the November election that if you remember, we also had some citywide elections. And so basically her testing was related to District 4, and that she said they found some errors that they had made because they didn't do rigorous testing throughout the whole thing. So, I mean, I haven't talked to her about their processes, and you can have that discussion with her, but I'm just telling you the other one is a totally apples to oranges comparison.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. But colleagues, I would just say that is why we're here. We know that if we go through this process, it could be subject to legal challenges. Do we continue down this path? You know, that's, each one of us has one vote, and we determine whether or not, but we still go into that based upon the input from council, knowing that a decision that we make regarding these maps could be challenged. However, though, Mr. Way, is there, if we were to continue down a path to say have a first reading on
The 11th.
the 11th, follow our
25th,
normal course,
and May 4th,
and May 2nd?
May 2nd.
May 2nd. Can the Election Commission say to the council, we're going to have the voters vote on the map we wanted them to vote on versus the map that's adopted by the Memphis City Council?
Okay, there are two assumptions that you've made. The first one is that the council is going to adopt the maps presented by the redistricting committee, which
Correct.
may or
Yes.
may not
Yes.
happen.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
secondly, I don't think you're in any different position if you did it that way than you're doing it now. You may do 2 special meetings and still do it 3 more times on the regular meeting and then see where it goes. That's kind of the essence of my opinion to you. I said, if you want to try to do special meetings, I don't think it'll work, but you can try to do that. And I will tell you, and you kind of admonishing me for being ambiguous, I wasn't trying to kill anything, okay? But I'm just going to tell you the truth, which is what I'm obligated to do. You know, I've handled a number of matters in court that dealt with the validity of our ordinances, principally annexations, Stonebridge Hillshire, Countrywood East, South Court Oak, Southwind Commercial, Southwind Windyke Residential, Costco North, FedEx Headquarters, Hickory Hill, Berry Hill. The first thing that people challenging an ordinance do is make sure you have followed strictly the process for adoption. And the first thing they'll look at, have you had 3 regular meetings? And the problem is that even our rules say all ordinances shall be passed on consecutive regular meetings. So that is the interpretation that's been given for decades by people that preceded you. And that's going to be thrown in your face, okay? So if you want to proceed with special meeting and have a vote, fine. Understand that it may be disregarded. So if you want to be safe, you can go 11/25, May 2nd, in addition to that, and then see where you end up. But your argument is if you go with the date that you file the petition rather than the date you pick up, I don't know how your argument is any different doing it 3 regulars versus special 3 regulars. So it's up to you. I just have an obligation to tell you what the risks are, okay?
Okay. Colleagues, any questions for Ms. Johnson?
How you doing?
Fine.
I have a couple questions. I'm just sitting here thinking. Last time when we dealt with District 4, we had 3 readings on the ordinance then, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That didn't go before the public for a vote, if I recall.
No, you're right.
Except for your normal process for adopting an ordinance, which is at 3 public meetings. And then
Okay.
you have a public meeting and third reading. And I don't believe anybody showed up to oppose or comment on it at that time.
Okay, so all we're basically is doing is trying to get 3 readings for ordinance in time to go before that. Okay, next question. Whatever we would adopt, does it have to go, it has to go to you. So when would he actually receive the maps? When will you be receiving the maps? Do you know?
The maps don't help. The underlying statistical data is what helps.
Okay, so
And I
when will
don't have,
that? And how much time are you going to need for that data?
I don't know. I can't even tell what's been changed and what hadn't been changed.
Okay. Then the next question is, after you complete that, we vote on it. I was also told that it has to be signed by the mayor before we submit it to the election commission.
Any ordinance has to be signed by the mayor or will become law 2 meetings thereafter, absent his signature.
So where are we on time-wise is my question now, with all of that to be done?
If we have a May 2nd, assuming he doesn't sign it right away, it would be May 19, and then you'd have a June.
16th and 13th, June, well, our May meetings are the 2nd and the 16th.
Right.
Our June meetings are the 13th, remember, we just changed it, the 13th and the 27th.
So if he didn't sign it, it would be June 13 that it would go into effect.
Okay. So we also know by that time, the election commission is going to say, no deal, I'm not going to deal with the maps.
Again, you're making assumptions about things that may or may not.
Well, I'm just saying, based on what they said, everything had to be with them by May 15th, April 15th, correct?
Yes.
So what would be our recourse if we hand them the maps, the information in June?
If you adopted new maps, the recourse would be to try to force them in court to do it, which would make, it would be some contention.
That boy's not that good.
And see, and then the problem, well, I don't like to litigate in public, but that's the issue. And then the problem that you have, to go back to your example, I pull a petition. Who is the guy that's over Clerb? He pulls a petition in District 3. And so he files it immediately. Y'all cut him out, he comes, the hell you did? I'm suing your ass. That's the problem that you got, not from the election commission or us, but people that rely on these maps. The other problem that you have is if you don't do it 3 regular meetings, there is a doctrine called
I still got another
equal
question.
dignity, okay? We know that you cannot change a charter provision with a simple ordinance because they were not adopted the same way. A charter provision is adopted by ordinance and then it is validated by a vote of the people. So you have to change such an ordinance with an ordinance of equal dignity, meaning adopted by you and approved by the people. Where you have this circumstance where you're going to rely on special meetings, you will have an ordinance that was adopted by 1 regular meeting and 2 special meetings, but the existing map was approved at 3 regular meetings. So if you look at just the hierarchy, the one that you're doing now with special meetings could not knock out the other one because it wasn't adopted with equal dignity. So there are a number of issues that arise. So, I mean, I'm just laying out all of the things that I've experienced in all of the annexations that we've done and everything else, that when people are looking to disavow your enactments, they look at everything. And all these little things may be insignificant, but they're mandatory, and that's why I have an obligation to tell you.
Great. Ms. Johnson?
I have another question.
Sure.
Okay, it sounds to me that we may be running out of time right now to get something done by April the 15th. But if we would continue with the process and then adopt some maps, could those maps not become effective for the next election? Not this upcoming election, but the very next election?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know that I'm not sitting here trying to give, I mean, you operate on a majority-minority paradigm. The majority controls minorities against the thing. I'm not here trying to give the majority a magic bullet or the minority a magic bullet to defeat it. I'm just laying out for you what the problems are. So if you're going to do it and you're going to make the argument to the Election Commission, you make the decision how you want to proceed, but I think I've told you.
Was that it, Ms. Johnson?
That's it, but I just think this may be an opportunity for us to go to a 13 district rather than staying with the setup we have now. If we still have the time and we're gonna miss the April 15th, let's talk about it. Thank you.
But in response to that, Ms. Johnson, there's nothing preventing us from adopting this, whatever maps come out of here. There's nothing preventing us from adopting that. We have an election October 5th, 2023. The last thing that I could do as an outgoing council member is to present an ordinance for us to say for the 2027 elections that we do this. So one doesn't, if we go through, let's say we introduce something on April 11th, then the date's April 11th, 25th, and then May 2nd. Even if we did something like that, and it's voted upon, and we send it to the Election Commission, and they say, well, yeah, we finally got it done. We had some issues, but we got it done. There's nothing that stops the next council from coming in, or any of us that's rolling off this time, putting an ordinance on there that says that we want to go to 13 members. We got any time before 2027 to do that. But I don't want us to think that because we're running out of time on this, we can't act upon it. I think those things, both of those things can exist. Vice Chair Smiley.
I think we're spending a lot of time talking about hypothetical situations, and I don't think we need to. I think this body has to decide whether we're going to actually adopt the map. If we adopt the map, then we deal with the other issues that come. I think we need to go directly into a presentation from Mr. Harris, hear what he has to say, and this body decide whether we're going to adopt the map. If we decide to adopt the map, then we have Attorney Wade, and we send a letter to the Election Commission and say, this is the map we would like to use. They say no. I'm pretty sure Attorney Wade wouldn't mind someone else. And I'm not that impressed with their lawyer. So let's go.
Let me point out one other thing. I haven't seen the data or anything to be able to give you my opinion about any of it. Also, there's another possibility. Once something hits the table, it's subject to amendment by all 13 of you. Yep. So there may be 10 other maps, and trust me, I have been in this process. In 1995, everybody had a map. They had multiple maps. Shep Wilburn had multiple maps. They went on for 4 years with their maps. They finally adopted a compromise, and I sold it to the federal court. So I'm just saying that once this stuff hits the table, you may have a whole lot of.
That comes with the territory.
Dr. Warren may have a proposal. Yep. Everybody might have a proposal, and that may delay you as well. So.
Mr. Harris, are you prepared to provide a presentation to us? Yes. Okay. I'll ask Brian.
Also, you might want to get the lights so they can see those colors.
Didn't we already receive those? Yeah, everybody already received those too.
Didn't bring my glasses. Councilman Smiley. That's what you need. Let me address that. I got them. Let me address it. That's what you need. That's what you were questioning about.
I saw your email.
Yes.
I saw your email.
Yeah, that's an issue. So that's my issue.
But still,
Remind me not to volunteer for something like this again.
you can put your disclaimer. Just say,
Remind me to never volunteer. You were chosen. No, I just wanted to offer some. Just let me know when you're ready. When you're ready, I'm ready.
What's yours?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let me open by saying, thank you for giving me this time to go back through this presentation for the 15th time. We have made a lot of changes over the course of the last couple of months on the maps. The plan that you see in front of you now is single District 8. This is the one that we've put the most time in and made the most changes to. Let me also open by saying Attorney Wade is actually correct about the data. One of the reasons, and I actually have some of the data with me, the problem with one of the reasons why I haven't turned the data in my deliberations going through the iterations of the maps, I actually found some problems with the census data that the current city council map is based upon. The census data for the Memphis city proper, or Memphis city, is 633,104, according to the census. The election commission provided a count of 633,102. Those numbers in itself, we're talking about a difference of 2, are not really material. They don't cause a problem with the population deviation of any sort. Could have been timing and annexation, could have been a number of things why those numbers are different. I got my idea, but I would just defer to others on that. The actual, and this is what I'm trying to determine, the actual, in my estimation, the actual census number should be something more along the lines of 627,448. The difference in the numbers reflect the de-annexation areas, primarily in the South Cordova area, but other areas around. Long story short, the current data that I was provided, census data and precinct data, was based upon 633,102. That would be the total census or the estimated census for the city, but that doesn't back out the de-annexation, if that makes sense. So the current map the 22 map that you're operating under now, there may be some problems with that. I sent a note earlier to Attorney Wade, and I believe a couple of more people that wanted email. I actually found this about a week and a half ago. But I wanted to make sure that what I found was actually correct, and I've actually had people to double check behind my homework, and I've looked over it several times. The impact means that in all likelihood, the districts that we have now are likely not compliant with the 10% population deviation. I've got some early estimates on each individual district, and I'm talking about your current districts that you're operating under right now. I also found when trying to match and do a crosswalk to create data so I could show you my precincts that I created and how they compare to the current districting plan, I found some inconsistencies and some problems with the precincts that you have according to the ordinance that you passed. There are actually several inconsistencies. A couple in particular, there are several precincts that are in both Super District 8 and Super District 9 on your ordinance, and I believe the ordinance number was 5833. Now, this could have been some type of typo, but there are actually some issues. That's why I haven't presented the stats that I had, because first I thought the stats that I had were wrong. I wanted to basically verify and validate all that data. So to make a long story short, I am not sure that you can continue. I'm not sure that the Election Commission, and I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on television. I'll let Mr. Attorney Wade handle that and deal with that. If the Election Commission can, if you decide to change, force you to keep a map that currently, based on the data that I see right now, without it being verified, there are some inconsistencies in there and population deviations that don't meet standards. Let me just say that. Now, that's preliminary investigation based on what I've seen. There may be good reasons why there are these inconsistencies, but they certainly are inconsistencies and they're glaring. Before I go on, do y'all have any questions about that?
Yes. Actually, my question is for Mr. Wade. Mr. Wade, I know this is off the cuff. You may not necessarily have this, but do you know the population of which we approve these maps?
633,102.
Okay.
That was verified by our mapping and engineering department.
Okay. Now, when did the de-annexations take place?
De-annexation took place effective 2021, I believe.
Okay. So when
December 31.
December 31 of
2021.
Of 2021.
Yes.
So
after the census.
After the census.
And
now,
so the comptroller's number had those in his numbers. So the mapping department had to carve those out.
So when what I'm getting to, in the ordinance that we approved, were we approving 633 or a number less than a number minus the de-annexations?
That's correct, 633,102. And in the ordinance, we had split precincts. Remember, we combined them all, but the ordinance provides that the maps control over the specific language in the ordinance. And so there are maps in the Valerie's office that control them, the specifics, and those are the Election Commission shape files, which they have already incorporated into their system.
Okay, because I guess what I'm curious, I'm looking at the census, I'm looking at census.gov, and I see a population census April 20th of that 633,104. Now, what I want to be sure of is that back in that 633,104, 633,102, that's immaterial, those two individuals there. But I want to be certain that what we approved took out those people who de-annexed themselves.
It did.
So where's the so there is something that exists that shows us that?
Absolutely.
Where is
We have
that?
two maps, one district maps and super district maps that accompanied the ordinance, and they are in the official records of the comptroller's office.
Okay, so if I were to look at the maps, though, just the maps on on the surface, Mr. Wade, I don't see any numbers where I can verify that.
Those numbers are in the maps. All the precincts are identified, and there is a report that I provided you that has specific
Okay.
numbers
So,
for each precinct.
right. So what I would request, I don't know who can provide that to me, is have that disseminated to all the council members, because we don't have it in
We'll
front of
do it again.
Okay.
It was disseminated to you prior to you approving the third reading on August 23rd, 2022.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it, because I went through my inbox, was trying to find everything. I couldn't find it in there.
There was a report that I provided to everybody.
Okay. So I would think, though, I would want us to have not just a report, but have that almost as exhibits for anything that we approve, if people want to go back and look at that, but that would be helpful.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Harris. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Easton Thomas was in the queue. Okay, no, okay. Yep, Ms. Harris.
So I thought I wanted to address that first. That's one reason why I didn't have the data. So until we reconcile those two pieces of data, because according to the map, visually, and this is what I talked about in the meetings, looking at spatial data can be very misleading. So the maps themselves, pictorially, for lack of a better phrase, shows that the annexation precincts had been pulled out. The problem is, if the 2020 census data is 633,100, and let's use the election commission number 102, I don't know how you could de-annex and still have 633,102 in your current plan. So there may be something there that's missing that before I can completely go forward. I think I requested I guess an official, I asked for an official shapefile of the city with census data, that would include the annexation. And from what I gather, that 627 number that I talked about is probably where we should be. So in other words, you can't have the same number that we started with in 2020, in 22, if you essentially did that. That's one reason why the spatial data is very misleading, and there may be a disconnect somewhere along the line. But again, I'm not. Yes, sir. Please correct me.
All right. The number that the comptroller gave us was 647 something. After you took out the de-annexed areas, it came down to 633,102. We didn't start with that number, and Mr. Harris misunderstands that we didn't start with 633,102. We started with a higher number.
Okay, that number was about
47, I don't remember.
Okay.
I just have to slightly disagree with all due respect. I think the last time the city's population was 640 something was in the 2010 census and not the 2020 census. I'm not sure that number's correct. I know you're going back. Okay. Yeah. So I think so they won't have this conflict. Obviously, Mr. Wade is an expert, has been doing this a long time, and I don't want to make statements that would conflict with what he has to say. I'm only going by what I have in front of me. In fact, I've requested, solid data so that we can reconcile the differences so that we can make sure we are where we need to be. Yes, sir.
And I don't want, I'm not trying to have a debate about it. We rely on our experts to give us the information. They did it. And I don't know where his information comes from, but that they can get together and figure that out and find out whether engineering is going to stay.
But
and
Ms.
even
Wade,
if his number is right, or their number is right, or somewhere in between, I don't think it will have a material impact on the legality of what's on the table.
okay. But still, for the record, when I'm looking at, if anybody goes in right now and Google Memphis Census 2020, you will see 633,104 on census.gov. I'm passing along. So.
And Mr. Chairman, the only reason I know this, I'm not all that smart. I have just spent a lot of time on census and district data over the last several years, day and night, and over this process. So lastly, first, assuming I'm wrong, which I've spent the last week assuming I'm wrong going through the data, then I guess we're okay and we can move forward. Assuming I'm right, based on what I've looked at, and I think I am, then the actual population deviation, the difference between that 633,102 and what we're saying, the 627 number that I've estimated, is not a huge number, but when you divide it by population by district, it can throw off the population deviation for a particular district. For example, we're talking about 5,000 some people and some change. That may not be material in one district, but it might be very material in another district. So let me go through this map first. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Easter Thomas had a question, and, yeah, go ahead.
Well, not a question, Chair, but I was under the impression that since we did this presentation before and last week in our redistricting committee, that we be able, in order to keep our quorum, I see Councilwoman Johnson got her stuff in her hand. If we are able to take a vote, and then this information is sent to Attorney Wade for review, we can continue in depth with all 13 members, assuming everybody will be here next Tuesday, in our next council committee meeting. So, for the sake of, Dr. Warren, you gone?
Yeah, he said he has to leave, yeah.
So I was trying to not waste a special meeting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we just lost 8. I was calling for the vote as the doors just closed.
Okay.
Assuming that we be able to be more in depth on a conversation on next Tuesday, assuming that if we are able to pass this on first reading in our special call meeting, we will have all of our colleagues here with us. We'll have Attorney Wade with us. Hopefully Mr. Harris will be with us. More of the community will be with us as well and be watching in, as we usually do with our ordinances that we pass the second reading and are able to have a discussion, a more deliberative discussion. I would hate for, rushed isn't the best word for this, but I would hate for today to be as rushed as everything already feels. So I would like to call for the vote, but if you want to comment further, because I know people have to be places.
I know people have to leave, but
yeah,
based upon the
what was just
opinion
shared
of council, though,
Okay.
and the fact that this part could be challenged, colleagues, I'm more inclined for us to meet Tuesday,
to do first
go
reading
down
instead.
that line
Okay.
of looking at the 11th, the 25th, and the 2nd, where that can't be challenged.
Right.
And we say, and if we have to battle the election commission to say, accept this.
We have a good
we do that.
attorney.
We have a good attorney to do that. And
Yeah.
so, you moved this. Would
Okay.
you withdraw
I'll
your motion?
withdraw my
your second?
motion. Also, but can I ask that the back and forth discrepancy that we had, where we don't know about the numbers, whatever, can that be presented and cleared up by Tuesday?
Let's have that
we
presented
able
to
to
us on
have that?
Tuesday. Yes.
Yeah.
That should be some of the background information.
Because
that
I
we'll
was
have
kind of, that's
Tuesday
why I was in the
act
queue
about.
before and took
Yeah.
myself out. I was kind of confused on
Okay.
what was actually being said by both Attorney Wade and Dr. Harris.
And so, colleagues, if we go down this path that I'm suggesting that we go down, we're looking at just our regular meetings, and that would require us, because we schedule a special call meeting for next Wednesday, April 12th. So if we go down the path that I'm recommending, the one that's least challengeable, we can go ahead and cancel that meeting. That was my question. So
Yeah,
the path that we're going
yeah.
on is introduce, if we get the votes on Tuesday, we start and, we try to move it down on first. We've done it before, where we've had an ordinance, we moved it down for first reading on the same day.
We do it all the time.
We do it all the time. And so that's what I'm proposing that we do. And because that route, as Mr. Wade said, would be less challengeable. We battle the election commission and say, look, we duly passed this.
In our
Y'all work it
regular
out.
meetings.
And the court can compel them to do so. versus going down the path where it could be challenged and all of this, the effort that the committee, you spending your time, Ms. Johnson was here practically every meeting for us to do all of this, and it just goes down the drain. Okay. Any other council members want to speak on anything?
I do want the community member that was here, Ms. Franklin, to give her comments since she took the time to go ahead and
Yeah,
come down.
before we adjourn, yes, Ms. Franklin.
You sure?
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no, is there any other business to come before this council? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.